Welcome to everyone to our seventh session on what you'll need to know in getting prepared for the 2025 Melbourne to Osaka yacht race. Tonight we've got two presenters for you. We've got Lillian Stewart, who'll be talking about clean oceans and sustainability at sea, and Robin Brooke, who will be talking about provisioning in what she calls ships, biscuits and weevils. But before we get on to our presenters, just a couple of little things. We noticed that in the chat, and that's the WhatsApp chat, that there's been a lot of questions regarding ENC charts and life rafts, etc. So Sally's looking to put together another session for you within the next preferably 2 weeks or so to cover those items, and we'll probably get presenters along to actually talk about the ENC charts and hopefully answer some more of those questions that you've been putting up in WhatsApp. Also, if you're at the Melbourne Boat Show on the 17th to the 20th of October, and I believe that's down in Docklands, Leighton Hulley from Offshore Marine Electronics will be down there, and he can take you through how to set up your ENC charts if you have a Raymarine Axiom chart plotter. If you can't get down there, Offshore Marine Electronics are located at Sandringham, and you can probably catch up with him down there at some stage. And so with that, we'll get on to our first presenter, who is Lillian Stewart. She is a PhD candidate in a multidisciplinary project focusing on marine plastics. Lillian's project seeks to provide the recommendations for the appropriate types and reuses of these materials. And once completed, we'd expect to find her work and recommendations appearing in the National Plastics Plan and also the Waste Management Plan. Now, both of those are national plans by the government. In addition to her PhD work, Lillian is also the champion for the ORCV Clean Oceans program, which last month was the winner of the Sustainability Award at the Australian Sailing Victorian Awards. So incredible effort that she's doing there. Lillian is also a competitor in the 2025 Melbourne to Osaka yacht race. And she'll be sailing on White Spirit, and I'm really looking forward to what she's got to talk about, because this is going to be one of the key things that'll be driving this initiative going forward. So Lillian, over to you.
Thank you, Grant. Just checking everyone is able to hear me okay, and I will turn my camera on as well. There we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for that intro. That was quite lovely. I sound a lot more accomplished than I feel like I am, but look, thanks for having me tonight. Like you said, I am the Clean Oceans Coordinator at the ORCV, where I'm really enjoying that role. And shout out to the ORCV, who have done a fantastic job in getting some recognition for that at the recent awards. I am a PhD candidate. I'm down here in Hobart at the moment. It's raining as per normal. And I'm currently, in addition to what you mentioned, looking at microplastics in fish, particularly in flathead, which we all like to eat, and in their mussels and other tissues. So I'm currently going between getting a boat ready for Osaka and working in a lab. Moving straight into it. I'm going to just talk briefly about the Clean Oceans program, just for a little bit of context as well, because we will be working as the ORCV's program in amongst the Osaka race. Basically, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to embed increasingly sustainable practices and awareness and education into the sport of sailing, particularly in an offshore context. Our reach goes throughout our Victorian events, as well as the ones that come down here in Tassie. We have a lot of on-ground as well as online initiatives. We don't operate like a typical club would, in that we have a home-based sort of thing. And so we have to sort of get a little bit creative with how we implement our ideas and get that knowledge and awareness out there. We also are really interested in developing citizen science opportunities within the sport of offshore racing. Coming from a science background myself, I'm very aware of how scarce resources and things like that are when you're trying to undertake research. And so citizen science is an avenue that you can take advantage of, especially when you've got boats out at sea and oftentimes a large number of them. And so this is also something that we're working on within the program long term. Just an example of some of the things that we do as well. When I say we showcase species and try and get a little bit more of a marine science awareness out there, every time we go to a destination, I collaborate with an organisation on the ground there and I ask them what's something that is important to you or a particular conservation or research concern. For example, this one was from Apollo Bay with the nudibranchs, which were particularly interesting. They're super colourful little creatures that you can actually even find in marinas. They're only about this big. But they're fantastic. And just knowing about what is happening life below water sort of puts into context why we have to do certain things on land and at sea as well, just to make sure that we can preserve this and make sure it's there to last. The program builds on what has been put forth by a group called Sailors for the Sea. They've run a clean regattas program, and this is essentially a framework where there are different steps and things that you can do when you host an event to ensure that you're upholding a certain standard of environmental stewardship. And so depending on how you go with this, and you can also you can use their guide, but you can also do your own initiatives as well. You submit a report, and at the end of a race, when we do that, you get a certification based from platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and participant. And the RCV has consistently demonstrated a silver standard for everything that we have done. So we've been working from this as well as doing some of our own things on the ground. And we're really looking forward to maintaining that and doing better as we go forward. Again, I thought this photo was actually pretty cool. It's a little bit grim, but this is a photo that I took on White Spirit last week. And it sort of puts into context why it's important to do the things that we do. This photo here was a filter that we'd cleaned one of our water inlets, and you can see that there's just a rainbow of little pieces of plastic there. And these are the microplastics. This is just one topic in the marine space, but why we sort of go on about why it's important to reduce single-use items and be more conscious about the resources and the waste that we produce and use is because when pollution and things like that get into the ocean and they get to this stage, it is actually impossible to remove them from that environment. And so they're there permanently and they don't disappear. They just get increasingly smaller. And it's that decrease in size that means that they're more available to different species and different environmental compartments that not only create a risk for that marine life, but they also are now creating a risk to us. Like I said, I'm researching plastic in fish, which has other associated chemicals and problems that come along with it. And not only that, it's also just bad for your boat. It clogs boats up. It's not good. So let's try and avoid it. I mentioned just before how we're looking at citizen science opportunities, and I will mention this at the end of the presentation as well. But for the Osaka race, we're currently exploring an opportunity to use a new system that is totally enclosed and that you can have. It's about the size of a shoebox on board to log the species of plankton out in the open ocean. This is pretty cool. This little unit, it's a 12-volt system that essentially you take a water sample, you pump it through some little pipes, and there's a camera that will photograph every single organism in that sample. And this is really important because a lot of the time research actually lacks a lot of data and understanding, and certain areas are particularly data poor. And so having a fleet of about 30 or so boats going from Tasmania to Japan covers a huge number of latitudes and areas that currently don't actually have a whole lot of data. And plankton's really important. It's the foundation of our entire marine ecosystem. And understanding how that community is changing, where certain species are present, helps us with our greater understanding of our changing climate and what's going on there in like a seasonal sort of basis. And so what we're hoping to do is work with a crowd called Planktoscope, who are based in France, but they've got these little machines all over the world. And this has previously been trialled in, I believe, the Volvo Ocean Race. The problem that came from that was that the boats were going too fast to do anything. And so given the Osaka fleet are sort of not quite a super maxi speed, but they're still going at an all right medium speed, it's sort of the perfect case study to try and explore this and see if it works. And so we're currently working on this. I'll bring it up at the end as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. For context as well, this is the little unit that we would be working with. It essentially just has a little in and an out and a camera, and it just cycles through, and then you can just put the water back in the ocean and you don't have to hold on to any samples on board. So tonight, more formally, what I'm going to be talking about is before you leave, your planning and your provisioning, what can be done at sea. So what can be tossed, what can be stored, and possibly how to go about that. And also how to deal with our rubbish that we do generate on board so that when we get into Osaka, it's ready to go and it adheres to all of the rules and things that they've got over there. And at the end, I've got an expressions of interest for the citizen science project. So jumping into before you leave, it's also good to know about some of the resources that are out there to help. It's a bit of an emerging space, I would say, the whole sustainability and sailing, especially for a really long offshore race. We've got more knowledge and more resources to help us with that. This is a really good one as well. It's the Sailors for the Sea that we work from with the ORCV. And they basically have a green boating guide where you can go through a whole bunch of different categories and you can click on that and it will take you through points and step-by-step guides and just give pieces of advice that you can also maybe use on your own boat. So while we're in the pen and while we're planning, Robin will also speak a lot more on this as well. But my tips for everyone going into this is if you're stocking up on things, buy in bulk rather than buying more smaller individually packaged things if you can. And again, I'd like to also point out that not everything is going to be applicable to every single boat in everyone's situation. But I guess the ask here is that everyone is just mindful and considerate. And if you have an opportunity to do something a little more sustainably on your boat, that you explore that and you basically just have an awareness of an understanding of what we do and why it's important. So things as well, like in the kitchen or in your bathrooms or anything like that, if you can opt for something that's reusable over single use, that will also save space and things like that in your bin, so you're not constantly throwing stuff away. Anything that can be washed as well is also fantastic, understanding that water is a important resource. Your rubbish management system is going to be a lot easier to manage if you've got a bit of a split system, for example, general waste or sort of landfill items versus those that are going to be sorted for recycling as well. So maybe you could get 2 bins next to each other or something like that. And as well, thinking about the bilge, as given everything is eventually going to either get washed through there or end up there, having things like oil mats and things like that under your engine that can basically just absorb pollutants that otherwise would go into the water, that can just be contained and then stored in a secure rubbish compartment. And also just keeping a clean bilge. I'm sure we all know this, but things like fibers off our clothes, they're also likely to be microplastics and they'll end up in the bilge and possibly get washed out to sea as well. Again, just minimizing and mitigating what we have going into the ocean. Things like our cleaning products as well are also important to consider. Something we do on White Spirit, which is very effective, and that boat does get very grotty, is just literally vinegar and water. It's fantastic. It cleans everything. It's also really great for getting rid of mold. I believe it actually kills it. When you're looking at your cleaning products and things like that, going for simple ingredients lists over really long ones is going to be better. A lot more natural ingredients is better than a lot of really synthetic ones. Something as well is if you can avoid products that have ingredients that contain the words perfluoro or fluoro, which is different from fluoride in toothpaste. These chemicals are particularly problematic. They've been found in the environment to last almost indefinitely. They don't break down and they accumulate in body tissues, and they also accumulate up the food chain as well. And these are what we call forever chemicals. So once they're in the environment, they literally do not go away, and there's a plethora of issues associated with them. So if we can avoid those, that would be great. And as well, thinking about when we're in the tropics, we're all showering in the cockpit when it rains, things like our shampoo and our soaps and things like that. If you can go on the more natural, less ingredient intense side as well there, that's another tip as well. You can also get things like shampoo bars and bamboo toothbrushes from Woolies. The bamboo toothbrushes are nice and light, so you shouldn't have to chop those ones in half. Moving on to the rubbish at sea. Now, this is one that I think is important. Basically, when you're at sea, I think we all know that we're not to dump rubbish at sea. What we can do, though, is with our food waste, provided that it is essentially chopped up, or it could pass through a sieve 25 millimeter with 25 millimeter gaps. That is okay. We're allowed to do that. The International Governing Convention on this says it is okay. Everything else, however, does have to be kept on board. And this includes cigarette butts, chewing gum, and things like paper and cardboard. Take a considered approach to sorting your rubbish. If you do it the first time and you do it well, it's going to be much easier and nicer. Making sure that you're, constantly checking for things like spills or things going all over the place, wherever you end up storing that, making sure it is secure. This will fend off your bad smells, and it will just make it nice and simple for when you do get back to land. And the advice that I have been given from our counterparts in Japan is that we must store everything in see-through plastic bags. They have a bit of a different approach in Japan than we do in Australia. It's a lot more efficient, and they recycle something like 85% of their waste that they generate. So it's important that we adhere to their rules and regulations. What we can bag together are things like metal cans, glass containers, and plastic containers. And if they've got lids, you just take the lid off, but also keep it in the same bag. These have to be rinsed as well, so they have to be clean so they can be sent for recycling. Everything that does not fit into that list has to be kept in another bag, again in a clear bag. This is so that they're also able to check for any, obvious contamination and that sort of thing as well. These bags you can find pretty much everywhere. I believe Bunnings, Officeworks, I believe even Woolies and Coles have them, just rather than the black ones that we're typically used to. Once we get into Osaka, what's going to happen is those bags that you've done a very nice job of sorting are going to be collected by our ground team. For some reason, there is a photo that I don't believe is coming up on the slide, but essentially where we're coming into, there's the Majima waste facility. It looks like a bit of a Willy Wonka factory, and it's kind of cool that they have that right there when you come in. This place processes about 1,000 tons of waste a day. They do waste to energy, where a lot of it that isn't sent for recycling, like your metals and your glass, is sort of burnt, and then they use that energy then to create power back into the grid. I've heard the tours are actually really cool, so I recommend you guys doing it. You won't be able to miss it. It's this brightly coloured, very interesting looking building. And again, given that we are developing an opportunity for citizen science, what we're interested in seeing is how many boats would be interested in participating in this. There'll be more information provided as this develops over the next couple of months. But if you are interested in being a citizen scientist during this race, you can scan the code here, or you can email me as well. Basically, just leave your name and your boat name on that, and you'll be kept in any communications that we have. In short, there is no obligation to participate in this. We understand this is a race. We are just trying to maximise opportunity for different avenues within this sport. We would love for boats to be involved, and if you have any questions at all, just get in contact with me. I'll be more than happy to chat. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Lillian. Just a question for you. With the unit, how big is that unit that you were showing that you put through the? Is it a syringe? Is it that you pull the water from?
Yeah, so the whole setup has, I guess, two stages. It's got a trawl net that will go out the back of your boat. That'll pack up to really not much room at all. The actual planktascope unit itself is pretty much the size of my notebook here. It's designed to just sort of fit on a small bench space, and it is also all 12 volt and basically able to be completely operated in a boat situation. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and so with the samples, you take a syringe from the water sample, or how does that get passed into the machine?
Yeah, so once you've done your trawl, you've basically got something that like a little vessel that captures the water. That will then just get transferred into that. I'll see if I can bring the slide back up again.
Oh, it's all right. I'll move that. Yep.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, it goes in one syringe, and essentially there's just like there's a little motor, and it will just sort of pass the water all the way through. and then out into the other one where it's collected and you can discard that. It's quite simple, and when considering what we might think we might do with the boats at sea, is I wanted something that was able to be done probably given most of the conditions you'd be experiencing. So nothing that you have to super focus on if you're in seas that are a little bit seasickness inducing, nothing that will take up space, and nothing that's going to be overly involved or heavy and, create too much of a burden for any boats that might want to take this one up.
And so how long would you expect the whole process to take, say, from dragging? How long would you drag the chute out the back for? And then how long would it take to run the sample through? So from start to finish, how long would that whole process be?
The whole process would probably be half an hour to an hour. I'm also trying to work around how best to make this as efficient as possible, and the options that come with this. If you were able to do a smaller sample versus a larger sample, that means cutting down the amount of time trawling out the back of your boat, and also how much that sample needs to pass through. I'll provide a bit more information on this as well. I've got one here that I'm getting trained up on. So as I become more aware of that, I'll pass that one on to the fleet.
Fantastic. I mean, that's very exciting. I mean, it'd be very interesting to see the results of that if we can get a handful of boats collecting that data. And then finding out what the results were over the spread of the ocean. I know that when we did the race in 2018, the Southern Ocean, that's basically anywhere I consider sort of south of the Solomon Islands, the waters seemed to be beautiful, pristine, clean. And then as you went into the northern half, it was just amazing the amount of rubbish. And I think from when we had Annette Hasselman give her presentation, some of those photographs were quite shocking of the amount of plastics that have been washed up on the beach. So it'd be a really good indication to find out how clean our oceans are from the Southern Hemisphere right through to the Northern Hemisphere. So fantastic project, and congratulations again on your win for the Sustainability Award.
Oh, thanks, Grant. I've just seen a question coming from Sophie in the chat. How often do you need to sample? It's completely opportunistically. So if you've got a day where you're particularly bored, or you want to give a chore to your co-skipper, and the conditions are right, then go for it. Again, even if we sign up for this and we have a couple of boats with this setup and the conditions are just totally inappropriate, there is no pressure to. This is not to take away from the fact that it is a race or anyone's safety on board. It is entirely a proof of a concept, and I just think it would quietly be a little bit cool if we got this to work after having been trialled at the Volvo Ocean Race. So it's more so just getting people on board and giving it a go. And like anything science related, there's going to be trial and error and troubleshooting, but ideally we have a couple of successful trials, and that would just be amazing.
I think this initiative will be amazing just from a PR point of view to focus on the ocean races actually providing this sort of data and their feedback into that system. So yeah, well done. Great initiative, and thank you for being a part of it.
Thanks, Grant.
Okay, and I don't think, has anyone else got any questions before we move on to the next presenter? Okay, all right. Well, just to get the slides back. Excellent. All right. Our next presenter is Robin Brooke. Of course, everyone down here in Victoria and most of Australia already know who Robin is. But for our international guest, Robin is a past competitor in the Melbourne to Osaka. She did that in 2003. She's been sailing in the ocean most of her life, is a very experienced double-handed ocean racer, and with a keen passion for cooking and food. It's from that experience that you're going to see some of the slides tonight. I know that when we did the 2018 race, we actually consulted Robin to get some of her inside secrets, and so hopefully she'll be sharing some of those with you tonight. So over to you, Robin.
Thanks, Grant, and welcome everybody. Thanks for that, Lil. That was a really interesting presentation, and I hope that quite a few of the boats get onto it. Sophie, I did mention that perhaps Sophie and Annette would be the first to sign up. No pressure, right? So my presentation is called Ships, Biscuits and Weevils. I had an experience in Germany when I left Germany sailing to the West Indies that we did have weevils on board, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience. And ship's biscuits are often called, or were called, hardtack, and they were a big staple on board some of the older seafaring boats. So this evening, what I would like to talk about is from my experience of a little bit of offshore sailing. I did leave Sydney bound for Germany back in, when I was 26. I won't tell you what year that was, but it was a long, long time ago. We got shipwrecked up on number 9 Ribbon Reef, and I ended up back in Port Douglas. And from there, I spent a year while the owner of the boat went. I had a contract with him for this trip. And so he went back to Germany and sorted out the insurance. And I went and got a job on the prawn trawlers up in the Gulf and learned how to cook there. My mum sent me this book and said, well, if you're going to go up there as a cook, you better learn how to do it. So I used the cooking class cookbook from first page to last page. And we had everything on board that you wanted. That you needed, all the bread books. There'd been many, many cooks before me on that boat, and it was a fabulous place to learn how to cook on board a boat and how to manage the food and manage the movement of the boat. I then went over to Germany, sailed to the Caribbean, chartered, found out the skipper had no money then, and we developed a chartering business there for 4 years, going up and down the Lesser Antilles and further afield. Then a friend of mine who I was working with, her husband was a keen racer and he was retiring. And so we went for 3 months around the South Pacific on their racing yacht because he was designing a beautiful new cruiser and she wanted my input into how to lay it out down below. The Sydney Hobart, my first race on that was very, there wasn't much, there weren't many, there wasn't a stove, there wasn't a fridge, it was hard yakka. There were 13 of us. That was on sort of Orion. And then the Melbourne to Hobart, East, West, and the rest, I've done a lot of that two-handed with just George and I. A lot easier to feed 2 people than to feed 8. I think we took the same amount of food to Japan as we did to those shorter races on the West Coast with 8 people. The Melbourne to Osaka, of course, which was mentioned, and I did 3 Melbourne to Vanuatu races with the ORCV. So a little bit of cooking, and I do love to cook on board. It is fun. It's on the prawn trawlers, I realised that it was the only thing that you could actually change. The weather would change, but nothing else. The fishing still started at sundown and you went all through the night, and the only thing that really you could make life interesting with was with the food. So that's what I focused on. So here tonight, I just want to mention some of the stages of preparing to sail to Osaka, and apologies in advance for those who've already seen some of these slides. But the first thing is to get help. You're not expected to suddenly become a gourmet chef. There are people around you who want to help you get ready for the race, and so you need to tap into that. Talking about the centre of effort, explore your likes and dislikes, assess your fuel and equipment. How do you like to eat? Design the menu, develop the shopping list, sensible storage, waste, as Lil was mentioning, decant, label and list, and improvise. So seriously, find out who that person is who's been saying to you, this is so exciting what you're doing, I'd love to help. And they're a really good cook. They're well organised. So teach them about what it means to cook on a boat. It's not the same as cooking on land. You need smaller meals. You need them often, and you can't do it in a very heavy sea. You have to have different types of meals for different weather conditions. So the centre of effort is you need to be as one with your partner on the boat to decide how you're going to go about this, because you may not necessarily be the chef for, like I was, for 8 meals a day for however many days we were at sea. George only tried to cook once and it was a dismal failure, so I took over the cooking. But the centre of effort is that both of you really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, what the focus is on your sailing, when you can have a bit of fun with it, with the food. And it can be, I saw some of the boats preparing in Sandringham in 2003. One of them had a pellet of tuna, and they only took tuna and rice for the whole trip. So I really wouldn't want to be sailing on that boat, but you know, that was their choice. They wanted to focus on their racing more than on producing a gourmet meal in the doldrums when you're not doing much else but trying to get that boat moving. Or you can make it a little bit more challenging. The smell of baking bread on a boat is absolutely amazing. And you can do it quite easily over a number of shifts because your bread can be left there to leaven even overnight. Might have a little bit of a sourdoughy taste the next day, but you can mix it all together. You can leave it in the sun. You can go off watch. Then next time you come up, you do a bit of kneading, put it up again in the warm spot under the dodger, or if you're lucky enough to have a dodger. And then your next watch, your next off watch, or even your next on watch, even better, you pop it in the oven, and then it's nice and ready for you when you take a break and make a cuppa and have some beautiful hot fresh bread with butter. And don't forget that if you leftovers, you make into, don't forget desserts, which is use your leftover bread, butter it, put it in a bowl, throw some eggs and some sugar and some vanilla in there, some fruit, pop it in the oven. Certainly don't fill it up. I made a custard tart on the prawn trawlers, and I remember by the time I got it out, there was like, you know, this much of the custard left in it. The rest was all over the bottom of the oven. But yeah, don't forget your desserts. I didn't have enough desserts on board and I really regretted it. So what you're looking for is variety. When you're tired, you want it to be quick and easy, pre-cooked. You want to dunk it in some boiling salt water, then snip off the bag and then pour it or eat it from the bag, even if it's really rough. You know, pop it in a cup or in a bowl, and it's ready. But when you're bored and when you're well rested, you might want to be a bit more creative. And when it's hot, you might want to keep the boat cool down below and not use the oven. So, you know, how about a Vietnamese noodle salad? You just need a bit of boiling water and that's about it, with some smoked chicken or tuna. But then when it's cold, you'll be looking for that really hot, you know, spicy or really nice, rich casserole or a flavoursome pie. So the way that I went about it was I listed what George's preferences were, and as you can see, he's quite fussy. Doesn't eat tuna, he doesn't eat sardines, doesn't eat mussels, soup, olives, all of that stuff that I like. He doesn't eat that, but he does like brown food. So I focused on that and built my menu around what he liked, because I pretty much eat everything except offal. But your decision has to be made for your menu, has to be made around what your resources are. So if you've got lots of power, if it's easy to recharge your batteries, if you've got solar, and I'm assuming you'll have something to other than just the motor to generate your power. If you've got a water maker, or if you've got a limited amount of water, if you've got a saltwater tap or you haven't got a saltwater tap, if you've got a wind gen, or how many gas bottles can you fit in your boat. We used, I think, 4.5 kilo bottle and probably half of another one, but I cooked a lot, so you know, you can limit that if you're careful. That little gimbaled Caro stove there, so I know Gusto had a single burner gimbaled single pot. That's what they cooked with. Or you could have a water generated, you know, some more electricity there, so you can, I don't know what you've got. You might have a microwave. Love to have a microwave. This is how I like to sail. So you can have maximum comfort, or you have minimum comfort. So you have to design your food around what you've got, what your refrigeration is, and keep in mind that you haven't tested it in those really hot conditions that you're going to go through in the tropics. So keep in mind what you've got on board and how you want to eat. So next step, food spoils when air gets in. We all know that. So an important part of the kit for preparation, you don't have to take this with you, obviously, it's a good quality cryovac. So if you know someone who's into this, I know Rosie Colohan, she's got one. I'm sure she'd lend it to you guys. Get a good quality cryovac. If you can't borrow one, ask your butcher. I bought my meat from the local butcher, and I spoke with him about the race, got him on board as really interested in what we were doing, and asked him if I cook this up and don't cook it right through and slice it up, and would you bag it for me? And he said, well, I'm not supposed to. It's illegal. We're supposed to get it to a certain temperature. But he did it, and I took all my roast veggies down there, sort of almost cooked, and where they just get that caramelization on the outside, bagged them all up. He cryovac them all within an inch of their life. And so because I didn't completely cook the pumpkin through, it held its shape. It was really good. And for things like lasagna, if you don't want it to all squish when it's cryovac, then freeze it first. Cut it, cook it, cut it into slabs, half freeze it or freeze it completely, then package it up in the cryovac bags. That's a really good tip so that you don't get the juice oozing out everywhere. Same with your casseroles. And when you're packaging, you want small portions. You don't eat big meals when you're doing this, but you do eat often. If you have a limitation on the fuel that you've got on board, a good idea is the thermal cooking. Unfortunately, they're round, and so you need a sort of special place to store them. And you also I would recommend that you make a padded sort of cloth bag to put them in, so that because that little clip on them, I've had one and it busted off. And then what's the use of it? You had to put a brick on top, really, to put something on top to hold that lid down. It sort of loses all its efficacy if it's broken. So protect that if you're going to take it. So with the thermal cooking, the way that it works is it holds the heat in. So you'll cook your spaghetti just to boiling. You'll cook your pasta sauce, boil the bugs out of it, and then you've got the two pots. You pop them in the thermal cooker. It's taken you 15 minutes to make your dinner. You put it away 4 or 6 hours, 8 hours later, it's beautifully cooked and it's hot and it's yummy. So if you've got limited power to cook with, then these are really, really good. Super for days when the weather is expected to pick up in the evening. So if you obviously know what's happening with the weather. So you think, oh, okay, I'll do a casserole of beef bourguignon or something, and do it in the morning, put it in here, and then you've got it for whenever you want to eat it later on in the day. What's next? Oh, okay. You might not always want to eat at the same time. If your partner, if your co-skipper is snoozing away, you're not going to wake them up to eat. They will eat on change of watch, but you might want to eat while it's ready, and it just makes life easier. And you're hungry because you wouldn't be cooking unless you were. So we took a thermal container that holds a meal size, not a drink size, and you can put your rice in and these ones are good. The triple ones are really good. You can put your meals in those so that when your co-skipper comes up, they can enjoy their meal when they want to. 2 burners, Peter. 2, I've got 4. I don't know about you, but 2 burners, you don't need 2 burners. You could do one and then the other, but then it'll take you 20 minutes, not 10. When planning your meals, think how you might use the fuel from today to prep for tomorrow. So if let's say you're having a rice dish, then the next day you can maybe make a fried rice with throw in some prawns, throw in some veggies. Or if you're boiling water for pasta, throw in a few eggs to boil for the next day's salad, or use last night's leftover rice, as I said. Capsicum, a jar of that roasted capsicum is always really good. It's really flavoursome. You can put it on sandwiches. Tins of corn are great to throw in. Water chestnuts are really nice because they're crunchy. So you don't have fresh food for the whole trip. So having something like water chestnuts to throw into an Asian style meal is really yummy. You might have leftover beef roast. Don't forget the roast. Roast is a really, really easy meal to cook at sea. And as I said before, I cooked the beef, sliced it up, had it cryovac within an inch of its life, froze it, and then had it right in the bottom of the freezer. And we were crossing the equator, I think, and it was George's birthday, and I made him a beef roast. And the way I did it was we had a little canvas bucket, so we didn't have a salt water tap down below. So I had to haul the salt water, and I put it in. I had a pressure cooker, so a nice high, small pressure cooker. You don't need a huge one. Put the salt water in there, boil up the salt water, and then dunk the bags. Put the meat and the veggies in the boiling water. Don't open them up, but keep them closed, George. In the pot, and then when it's warmed through, with all the condiments, you can eat it. And all you've got to wash are the plates that you use to eat from, because you've got a pressure cooker that had water in it and it didn't have any food in it. So it's really, really a simple meal to make when you're at sea. Yeah, and you can use Deb too instead of potatoes if you can't be bothered, or it's too rough or whatever. Deb is fantastic. I love Deb. I don't know. You meet a lot of people who hate the stuff, but I think it's fabulous. But you've got to put some cream or some, those tins of cream. Yeah, that's good stuff to take, and some nutmeg and lots of butter, and mash it right up and nice and creamy, and it's fabulous with food like the Deb on board. So remember that, that you can't go down the corner shop if you forget something. So you think through, you make lots of lists, you decide what meals you like and simplify them. So you're not going to have lettuce forever for the whole trip. But you can, there are some things like canned bean sprouts, for example, that you might want to use in a stir fry to sort of give you, and as I mentioned before, water chestnuts are great. Give you the sort of sense of having fresh food without having fresh food. And if you plan for pre-cooked or refrigerated or frozen meals, then you need a contingency plan. Noodles and tuna, for example, dehydrated meals in case your fridge dies. If your fridge dies, you're going to be eating a lot of food very, very quickly. If you plan to cook, you also need contingencies in case your gas system packs up, as ours did last week. So in Vanuatu, our gas sniffer died and we needed to bypass it. A Kero stove uses more fuel than you think it does. So I don't know that there's too many boats with Kero stoves anymore, but if you do have a Kero stove, then you need to take more Kero than you think you need. And you also need to decant it into a bigger container, because those 2-litre bottles are really flimsy and they would easily break, and you'll not only lose your fuel, but you'll have Kero in the bilge, which is not terribly pleasant. So back in 2003, Yoko, Robin Hewitt on Yoko, he made a list of, he worked out for so many calories a day that you're burning, what you need to take, and then multiplied it by the number of days you're going to be at sea, plus obviously not minus, plus a contingency. And then he worked out, that he needs sort of 9.3 kilos of carbohydrates, for example. Then he goes around and buys all the carbs. And yeah, I don't do it that way, but for some people that works. I think most shelf-stable foods and are pretty balanced now, but you do have to do your homework. The Boat Galley actually gives a really, really good spreadsheet. You can just download it, you can put in your email address, and they'll send it to you, and you can change what's on this list for the things that you like, and then work out how much to buy. So that's a bit of a help to start your shopping list off. You can over-cater because you sort of think, oh, what if I run out of this, or what if I run out of that? But you can improvise as well. And if you don't have a fridge, or if you lose your fridge, this information, and I really think that we should hear from Sophie Snyders, because she's been travelling on her boat, and I know they've had some problems with storing food, and she's got a lot of experience. I think also vegetarian, so a lot of experience in storing fresh fruit and veggies and how best to get the most out of them. So we might ask her in a few minutes if she's got anything to add. But if you'd like the boat galley again, Caroline has done some wonderful work to provide information based on her 17 years of cruising around the world with her husband. I hope you can't hear that noise behind me, but we're having a dinner party and they're young women and they're very noisy. So storage. These bottles are great. They're nice and strong. It's fruit juice, and you can stick them under your arm and you can get that lid off really, really easily. You don't need sort of two hands to hold and then unscrew. So you can still hang on in a rough sea with those. Well labelled. Round containers that I mentioned before with the thermal cooking, they really are a waste of space. So start collecting the containers that you want to use for your trip. Think about what will go where for ease of access. You shouldn't need to go into the larder more than once a day if you plan well. So you've got your easily accessible foods, and then you'll look at your list and you'll say, okay, what do I feel like cooking? Like, what's the weather and what do I feel like making? And you can identify what you want and you can go into your larder and pick it out easily. And the way that I did that was I had these Ziplocs that were the large size Ziplocs. In each pack, I would put all of the dry ingredients for that particular meal. And I would, in those little, I don't know if you can still get them, but a tiny little container, which is like the old film container from the camera film when we used to have camera film. And I'd put my herbs and spices in that, or anything that I couldn't put directly into the flour or into what was being cooked, what was the dry goods. And then I'd also put my oils and my any sauces. I would put those in a bottle as well and pop that in the bag. I would put the recipe in the bag if it was something that I'm not used to cooking. Sorry about the noise. Which I'm not used to cooking. I put the recipe in there as well. And on the outside, my Sharpie, I would write on that what I need to grab from the tomatoes. Well, the tomatoes might not be in the fridge, but the bacon or the meat or the whatever you're going to add from the fridge. So you get all your ingredients out. You've got everything there in a bag, and then those extra items. And then you've got minimal mess around the galley while you're doing this. And also on my meal list, I numbered them. So I had 1 to 40 or whatever. And then the bags, I would put big numbers on those too and have them in my storage locker, 1 to 40. So if I decided I wanted spaghetti bolognese, on my list, spaghetti bolognese was number 17. So I'd go through number 17, bang. I had all the ingredients that I needed for that meal. Yeah. Oh, also don't forget to cross the meal off the list because you might want spaghetti bolognese twice and you've only got one set of it. So yeah. Waste management, I won't go into that because Lil covered it, but there's the Willy Wonka factory. That's the recycling plant that Lil was mentioning. I happen to have a picture of it on mine. Also, those plastic bags, those Ziplocs, I didn't mention about bread, but baking bread, of course, I had all my ingredients in the one and all I had to do was add water and the oil was already in there, the caraway seed, if I chose to make caraway seed a loaf or a fruit loaf. I made hot cross buns, so I had all the things that I needed the little piping bag to make the cross on the hot cross buns, all that sort of stuff, all the peel, orange peel and sultanas and all that went in the Ziploc bag. So what I did was you've got your bag with your flour in it and all your bits and pieces. You pour the bits and pieces in, you throw the water in, and then you massage the bag. And you put some gloves on, and then you turn it out. Once it's all together, You turn it out on the bench and give it a bit of a knead. Throw it in a bowl, in an oil bowl. Cover it over. And all those covers are those plastic. Sorry, Lil. Those plastic covers are wonderful. They look like shower hats. And then pop it up under the Dodger to proof. Really, really good. And then you put a bit of flour inside the bag and just rub it around, and that gets the rest of the flour out, sort of all. And then you can use that to store your other single-use plastics that you have to take because they're cryovac. You know, it's the cover for the cryovac. Rinse them in the salt water, you roll them up, put them in that. You can fit a lot of rubbish in a very small bag and then press it down, zip it up, take the air out, and you've got a very compact amount of waste there. A lot of waste in a very compact space. So then for people who, if you don't want to cook on board, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to, there is a bit of downtime some days, although it's surprising how much of your time is spent sailing the boat. There's a lot to do. So there's cryovac meals that you can get. These ones are shelf stable, no refrigeration, ready to eat. I find they leave an aftertaste. I find that you know, the next day I don't feel so flash. But the reason I put it up here is because it suits some people, and they are balanced, nutritious meals, and they're worth trying before you go because they're in there, and for a rough day you can get them out. Again, I think you can probably, if you don't have a microwave, you can probably just throw these in to the boiling water as well, just to heat through. You take it off the boil, you just leave it to sit there, or put it in your thermal cooker if you're using a thermal cooker. These are easy options. You can actually buy these. Ultimate Performance, 24 meals, $165. Core Power Foods. I don't know that these are cryovac, so you would need to have a freezer or a fridge and freeze them down and then pack them right on the bottom of the fridge. And you'll find that by equator, they're still partly frozen. I love this stuff. Shelf stable foods. Your eyes will be open when you start to go around the supermarket and think through the lens of, you know, what are we going to eat? I love sauerkraut. Put apple in here. You can use dried apple, throw it in. I do this with Deb instant mash with caraway seed. And I put caraway seed in the sauerkraut, and I put nutmeg in the Deb. And you can actually get canned. This is the German. This is where I learned to do this meal. And the German Kransky sausages that are in a can. They're fantastic. Great meal. Bit of mustard. Off you go. Bit of burping for the afternoon while you're on watch. Then there's the freeze-dried meals. These are quite expensive, but of course, all the big racing yachts, they throw 20 of these packs into a big plastic tub, throw boiling water on, and then ladle it into cups and things. I can't think of anything worse, but certainly as an emergency ration, it's probably worth trying them out, seeing if you like them, and taking a couple. That's what they say about them, that they're really good for you. It does say here that they're great flavour, but I don't know. It's not my cup of tea, but it might be yours. And there's also these ones. Somebody was taking these with them last time. I can't remember who. Might have been Joe from Tassie, but they've actually got the heater pack in them. So you break something, like a glow stick, and then it heats up the bag, which heats up the food that's inside. Sounds like a lot of packaging to me, but it's certainly for if you haven't eaten for a day, which, God forbid that would never happen on our boat. But if you haven't, it'd be worth trying that. Jo had the heater meals. Yeah, I thought she did. Yeah, so worth trying. I wouldn't, again, not for me, but might be for you. And yeah, like I said, get somebody involved, buy them this book, the Boat Galley Cookbook, have a look at it and decide what you're going to buy, what you're going to eat. I'll ask you, Dave Kenny, in a minute. You followed this, you said. So back in 2003, I bought these as a backup. Was never going to eat them, but we ate them, I think, on the way home. They were horrible. They're ready-made meals. They're made in New Zealand. They're our army rations. Our army boys eat these. And my mum found this place, this Hunger Buster meal over in New Zealand, and I got a box delivered, and everyone said, "Oh, where'd you get those from?" This was like they arrived about 4 days before the race. There were 5 other boats said to me, "Where did you get those meals from? Can you get us some? Because we haven't done anything about our food yet." So I cannot imagine that these guys ate these things for the whole race, but they did. They did. There was one, they hated the mushroom risotto, but the rest of them, they said they were all right. Where am I up to? So they're still around, but I did have a bit of a look. The Australian Government, Department of Defence, are now trialling this microwave-assisted thermal sterilisation, which produces the shelf-stable food so that you can have much nicer meals on board. So I've made contact with them, and I'm waiting to find out some information, and I'm going to offer to them that we might like to sample some of their food if they have got this up and running, this scheme to improve the meals that the Army eats. And that's a picture of one of their meals. It looks pretty good to me. So that's all I've got for you, but I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. Oh, I was going to ask Dave Kenny. Dave, can you, based on the information that I gave, you said that you sort of followed it. What was good, what worked and what didn't for you? What was the best part of it, and what do you think was bad advice? Are you there?
Hi, Robin.
Hi.
You got me?
Yep.
Yeah, we did a whole bunch of, well, Sharon and I mostly did a whole bunch of pre-cooking and then cryovacking into like pages in a book, and then write on the top of them and put them in the freezer, and then you just peel through the top. What do you feel like tonight? But the par cooked roast dinners was a fantastic idea that worked really well. And as you said, lots of little meals. You know, we ended up and goes were a big thing. We sort of drank one of those each, probably in the middle of the night when you couldn't stomach too much. It was a bit rough or whatever. But snacks and flavor adders, which you've mentioned quite a lot tonight, but little things like gherkins and you know, a bit of garlic will last reasonably well and stuff like that. But anything that sort of zings it up a bit is my call.
Yeah, I agree. Don't forget the spices. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And Sophie, you there? Would you like to add anything about the storage of fresh fruit and vegetables and how you went about that and what worked and what didn't?
So, well, I mean, on our delivery trip back from Osaka, we were without a fridge. And surprisingly, we did really well. Like, we had, you know, lots of dairy products, or like cheese. Like, everyone's surprised by cheese. Like, cheese lasts without being refrigerated. So that was like, we had cheeses still and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, all of the long-lasting veggies just last really well, like carrots and cabbage and pumpkins and all those sorts of things are really great to have, and have those in abundance. I mean, I can really speak from our experience just more recently though, going from Darwin to Broome. So we spent 8 weeks in the Kimberley without reprovisioning. And yeah, so our fridge was completely full, and we also had like other cupboards full of fresh vegetables that obviously needed to be eventually refrigerated, but we didn't have space for them in the fridge. So we would start eating all of the more perishable items, I guess, like your salad items, cucumbers, tomatoes and whatnot, until they started diminishing. And then you then transfer some of those other things that you've left out, like your cabbages or cauliflowers that haven't put in the fridge yet, and like, yeah, start transferring those into the fridge. So it's about eating the food that's going to obviously go off first, and then yeah, I suppose a lot of your meal planning might be around yeah, what's going to go off first as well. So yeah, I don't know.
And cabbage is good when you take the outer leaves off first. You peel it from the outside. You don't cut it, but you peel it from the outside, and yeah, it tends to last quite a
And the
long time.
same with iceberg lettuce as well. Don't cut into iceberg lettuce, peel the leaves off individually and it will last so much longer as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about the cheese, if you take it in wax, if you get a round of cheese, you'll find that will last. When you cut it in the tropics, some of the oil you'll lose out of it, but then it's just low-fat cheese, right? But it's still cheese and it's still beautiful and it lasts forever.
Yeah, you do lose a lot of oil, but it is still cheese.
Yeah. With the eggs, I didn't mention eggs, but I went to the South Melbourne market for my eggs and spoke with the egg guy there, and he's fantastic. And he said to me, "Don't buy your eggs. Get them from the market, not from the supermarket, obviously. But don't buy them after a period of hot weather. They're graded once a week, so find out which day they're going to have the freshest eggs in. Don't pick it after a really hot couple of days." And he said you're better off to get eggs that are a week older than to get eggs that are a week fresher, but after hot weather, because the shells are really thin after hot weather. So I thought that was a really good tip. Anybody else got anything to add or any questions? I haven't looked at the chat.
Robin, we did have one comment come up about not having an oven. Have you had any experience with a Dutch oven?
A Dutch oven like a pressure cooker?
Yeah, using a pressure cooker like a Dutch oven to cook your breads and so on.
Yes. I haven't cooked it in that, but a lot of people have told me they have. So yeah, that's entirely doable. Yeah, not a problem at all. Just got to practice at home.
Yes. Yeah, I know we used your tip of cooking those roast vegetables and cryovacuuming them, and then we actually ended up putting them on a pizza, and they were so yummy that we actually ended up making pizzas every sort of couple of days and used up all our vegetables instead of cooking it with the meat. We couldn't get over how flavoursome it was. It was, just, I suppose people that live on, the packaged food just will not appreciate how nice it is to get that flavoursome food, particularly as you're passing through the tropics and out the other side. Yeah. It really does make a difference to your morale and your trip.
I think that's what it's all about. It does. If you're eating that shelf stable food all the time, it's just nothing to like. Well, we all know that cooking and eating a meal together is uplifting. So anyway, it's everybody's choice, and it will depend on what resources they've got on their boat. Yeah, not everyone has a boat like yours, Grant.
Well, it was just a basic oven, but it did the job.
I remember doing a West Coaster with Sophie and Annette, and I had I think you were a vegan then, Soph, and Annette and Susie were vegetarians, and I was an eat anything except offal girl. Yeah. And I cooked for them down that West Coaster without a fridge. Had about 4 different types of yogurt, vegan yogurt and a coconut yogurt and this yogurt. It was really interesting. So, but you can do it. You can do it. We ate well. And
Robin, how from your experience, how long does fresh fruit last? Do you feel?
Oh, it depends. I mean, in my fruit bowl at home, my oranges go off really quickly. I don't know. I think it's the pairing thing. I think it's what you've got fruit sitting with. So maybe Sophie's got a better idea of that than me. But yeah, you have to buy, like I bought green tomatoes as green as you could get. So the unripened fruit and in the coolest part of the boat, obviously. So if you've got a dry bilge and you put a container in there of fruit, that would be fantastic. That's where you keep your wine, your white wine. You wouldn't use your fridge for your white wine, I don't think.
I see. And Annette made a comment about using her billy as a stove or a Dutch oven. Annette, do you want to just come off your microphone and just tell us about that?
Hi, everyone. My apologies. I'm in Queensland and have just been out at sea for 8 days and didn't realise there was a time difference. So I've only just switched on thinking you just started and I've come in at the end. So apologies. Yeah, we had a Billy Boyle, which I believe Robin mentioned pre the last Osaka, and we bought one for Red Jacket, and it saved a lot of gas because we were on gas rations on the way back from Japan. We used that. We steamed cakes and made bread in that as well, and so that was a real game changer on board the boat, having the Billy Boyle, which is a bit like a thermos, and you use the saucepan. You start cooking, like say you're doing a spaghetti bolognese, you start cooking and get it to simmering and boiling point, and then you pop it into that big giant thermos and close the lid, and a couple of hours later it's done. And we also did, thank you, I'm sorry Robin, I missed it.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, that was a game changer for us on Red Jacket. We were very basic, we were very minimal on that boat. So
Yeah, thanks, Annette. That I think that answers a really good question. That it can be doable even if you've just got a gas top burner. That you can still get some wonderful foods. And I think being able to make bread is a game changer. Being able to have a fresh sandwich makes life back to normal.
Yeah, that's good.
So has anyone else got any other questions for Robin before we finish up on that?
Well, there's a question in the chat, Grant, that I think Robin alluded to how much gas they used, but Peter's asking, how was your gas consumption for the last race? And if you used the oven a lot, would you go through a fair amount of gas?
We had a griller in the oven. Yeah, we had a griller in the oven as well as the oven itself. And we used, we did more than one bottle. We did connect the second bottle. So probably 5.5 kilo we used. But I mean, I use way and above, more than most people would on a boat, because, you know, I do crazy stuff with my cooking. But you probably get away with 4.5. But if you've got the space, I'd put another bottle on there just in case, if you're going to do what I did, make cakes and, you know, yummy stuff. If you're just going to heat that water and cook, you know, pastas and things, maybe not so much.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Nothing in the chat, Grant.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Robin, for all those tips and tricks. Hopefully, the next time the guys and girls go to the supermarket, they won't look at the shelves in the same light going forward. So, wonderful information, and a big thank you for that presentation tonight. Just before we wrap up, just a reminder that Rob and Stan have the Melbourne to Osaka yacht race watches, the commemorative ones. So you can get that on the QR code there, which of course this presentation, and also we'll be uploading this to YouTube later on, so you'll be able to get those details. Peter Downey is on WhatsApp. He's also in the chat here at the moment as well. So if you've need any equipment or advice, don't forget there's a 30% offer on that, and so contact Peter direct and he'll be able to help you with that. Also, Musto have the gear. It's the official gear for the Melbourne to Osaka. You can get your shirts. Paul Schultz is on WhatsApp, and he's also in the chat at the moment as well. There's a QR code there. You'll be able to get that online, or have a chat to him about it. And then we'd like to finish up tonight with just a few thank yous to our presenters, Lillian Stewart, and to Robin Brooke. Thank you for a wonderful presentation tonight and taking the time to share that information with us. Also, I'd like to just extend our thanks to just a couple of other people. George Shaw, who's obviously everyone knows is our chairman for the organising authority for this race. George does work tirelessly behind the background. No one says thanks to George, so I'm going to say it tonight and give him a big thanks, and mention that he's been working on this project now for nearly 4 years. He speaks to the Japanese consulate constantly. He's built relationships with every one of the consulate generals that have come and gone over the last few years. I've had the pleasure of attending some of those meetings with him and seeing George at work. He speaks to the Navy, he organises the roulettes, and then he's just constantly talking to Japan and our counterparts up at the Hokko Yacht Club to organise the arrival and all the ceremonies and up there. And it is just one of those never-ending jobs, and I can pretty well guarantee you there probably isn't an hour of the day that George is not thinking of what's needed for the Melbourne Osaka. So big shout out to George and from all of us on the organising committee and organising group. Thank you, George, for all that work you're doing. Also, I want to make just a quick special mention of Paul Roberts, who is the sail captain of the Ocean Racing Club of Victoria. Paul is doing a wonderful job. He's prepared all the documentation. He's looking through all the requirements that are needed. He's the one that's having to manage the actual race and get that organised. And again, it's one of those jobs that just seems to happen in the background. So a big shout out to Paul and thank you for all that hard work that you're doing. And of course, the last person I really want to single out tonight is Sally. Yeah, you guessed it, Robin. Sally is the backbone of the Melbourne Osaka yacht race. And without Sally, she is constantly getting on to us to organise these things, to be there. She rounds up everybody. She gets our presenters in place. She manages all that pretty well single-handedly and does it with a smile on her face. And it is very tiring. She's been doing it now for a couple of years to make this all happen. So when you see Sally, give her a big hug for me, or give a big hug from you guys as well, particularly for all that work she's doing. Also, we're going to be closing off tonight. Sally is organising another event to cover off on the ENC charts and life rafts and a few of those other things that you've been putting in WhatsApp. That initiative is done by Sally herself, and so we couldn't make these things happen without her. And so we'll get back to you within the next probably the next week or so with an update on when this next presentation will be. It is an ad hoc presentation, and so if you can't make it, it will be put up on YouTube. So from everyone at tonight's presentation and the organising authority and to all our competitors, we're so excited for this race and we really look forward to what's about to unfold. So thank you, everyone. And with that, we're going to close the presentation off. Good night.